This is False Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host today, Cody Williams, content director at FanSided.com. Merry Christmas to you, the starters. Merry Christmas to John Buhler, who's getting a little break. Our schedules couldn't line up over the holiday. Good. And I'm here to deliver a Christmas episode of False Start. We're going to be in, out, but we wanted to give you guys a little bit of a fun treat for the holiday season. So let's get right into it. We have 6 segments today that are all Christmas themed. We're obviously talking college football, but they are all Christmas themed. And that's our first. That means we're going to our first and 15 this holiday season. Sorry, and that is with no L or no L. What's a win or a loss for these college football entities? Was it a win or a loss for these college football entities? And we've got 3 of them listed here. And one to interestingly start off with is Lane Kiffin. Um, Bit of a mixed bag for sure this year. Got Ole Miss to the college football playoff. Can't coach in the college football playoff for them because of the nasty breakup as he moved on to LSU, which you could consider a win for Lane Kiffin. Uh, I'm gonna go no L though. I think this year somewhat of a loss for Lane Kiffin. Bueller and I are champions of Lane Kiffin as a coach. We think that he has been underrated for a while. But one of the things we also thought was that he had matured. One of the things we thought was that maybe he had changed a little bit. He hadn't changed all that much, man. The way he left Ole Miss for LSU was very indicative of the young, brash, and mature Lane Kiffin that got us to this point. And not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, entirely. Lane Kiffin's personality has helped him quite a bit in his career. But having said that, it does feel as if it does feel as if this year his stock has taken a bit of a hit, and it's most of it self-inflicted if we're being completely honest about it. But regardless, I'm gonna go with a loss for Lane Kiffin this year. Next up, we have the BYU Cougars, though. Obviously, fell short of the college football playoff. 2 losses to Texas Tech, one in the regular season by a lot, one in the Big 12 championship game by margin. I still think it's a no L. I still think they're celebrating the holiday season at BYU, not just because they're BYU. I think that when you look at BYU and what they've accomplished, I think, well, there's 2 things that I want to point out. One, I just think it was a great season. I think that you found Bear Bachmeyer, you got Kalani Sitake running this program in the right direction in the Big 12. You had them in the Big 12 championship game. And that kind of ties into the second point that we're talking about here, which is when you think about how BYU looks in comparison to a Notre Dame. Notre Dame took its ball and went home from the college football after they did make the college football playoff. And the refrain has been, if this is a problem, join the conference. BYU did that. BYU was the independent, playing a tough schedule, just like Notre Dame has, and they still went and joined the Big 12. And they're obviously seeing the fruits of their labor already. And so for me, that's a win. You're celebrating the Christmas season, Noel. And then last but not least for this category, we got the USC Trojans. And I think when you look at the USC Trojans, it's pretty clear to me at least that this is a Noel with it being a win this year. I can understand why you'd be disappointed. There were times where it looked like this Trojans team could get into the college football playoff and they fell short, whether that was against Oregon, whether that was against Notre Dame, multiple opportunities that were left at the doorstep. At the same time, this felt like a different USC team. It felt like the DeAnton Lynn DNA is starting to take shape in this defense. It felt like Lincoln Riley not necessarily getting back to his roots offensively, but it does seem like he is finding his footing again offensively. And it just feels like this program is like steering in the right direction, which it's been a minute since it's felt like that. It's been honestly since the first year of Caleb Williams since it's felt like that. And in doing so, like it feels like you can go into next season much more confident in USC than you would have in previous years. And that, I mean, that's not nothing. That's a relatively good deal if you're a USC fan. And if I were a USC fan, I would definitely feel confident moving forward. So I mean, that's a win to me. It's a win to me, something to celebrate on the holiday season. We're going to move on to our next segment, which is stocking, stock out, or Chinese food. And that's buy, sell, and hold. And it's about 2026. Moving forward, are we buying, selling, or holding, stocking, stock out, or Chinese food with these? I'm going to start with the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm Chinese food on them. I understand they're still in the college football playoff. This could age rapidly bad if they, were to upset Indiana, if they were to make a run in the college football playoff. But I still think there's some rightful questions about what we've seen so far from Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. I still think Kalen DeBoer is a hell of a coach. He has a long track record that proves it, and it's not like Alabama is bottoming out by any stretch of the imagination. But this is Alabama we're talking about, and when you're talking about Alabama, you're talking about national championships. And I haven't seen national championship caliber football from Alabama. Again, they have the talent to potentially flip a switch, but I don't think that the run game, I don't think the defense is quite elite enough to be able to do that right now in this season. It's the second straight year that the run game has been suspect. Last year in 2024, there was Jalen Milroe, which certainly helped the cause with the quarterback run game, but not so much anymore. And I think we're seeing that really take a negative effect. And maybe that's something DeBoer needs to change. Maybe that's something that him and Ryan Grubb need to get in the lab about. But regardless, I'm holding on Alabama. I'm not selling. Like, that'd be stupid. If you're selling Alabama, you're like, that's foolish. But I am holding because I'm not quite as bullish on Alabama in this new era for them, in this new era for college football. I just don't think it's necessarily the same calculus that we're doing for the Crimson Tide. Second one up, we got the Pitt Panthers. Pat Narduzzi ball. We love that. I probably against my better judgment, I'm gonna buy Pitt Panther stock. Um, we still don't know if Mason Heinzel will be at Pitt in the 2026 season, but if he is, I mean, you've got a young quarterback who looks like the real deal. You've got a coach who doesn't go about it traditionally, doesn't go about it in a way that a lot of other coaches would, but gets the job done. That's kind of Pat Narduzzi's MO. And I just think there's a lot of signs that Pitt is for real. They had a chance to, get into the ACC picture this year. Fell short, obviously, against Miami, partially at least because of the Heinzel injury. But ultimately, I just look at this Pitt program and it seems like it's in a really good spot. And you think back over the years, whenever Pitt and Pat Narduzzi have had a quarterback of substance, of caliber, they've been a team to watch out for, no matter what league they've been in. And that includes the ACC when you look back to like a Kenny Pickett. Mason Heinzel seems to be that guy. If they can keep him around, this feels like the real deal and something you can buy him. Um, Finishing up this buy, seller, hold, we're going with Lenore Sellers. And this is a tough one because I love Lenore Sellers. I think the talent is completely there, but I'm going to go stock out. And it's not just to get a sell in here. I actually considered going Chinese food here, but I think the reason I'm stock out is he stayed at South Carolina, man. I've talked about it previously, and like I just think that after what we saw with the expectations coming into 2025 and how unmet those were for both the Gamecocks and for Sellers individually, I just don't know how in the transfer portal era you could feasibly return and think it was a good idea for your future. I still think he's talented. I still think he's going to get drafted. I still think an NFL team will get a hell of a player and someone they can develop for sure. But at the end of the day, I do worry that we might have seen the heights of the Lenore Seller stock from going into the 2025 season, and staying at South Carolina doesn't give me a ton of confidence that that's going to necessarily turn around moving forward. That's going to take us to our next segment, which is Cole the Awk or Cole. This is another, like good or bad, or is a person getting Cole the Awk, our beloved mascot from Homer Hickam High, a figure of honor, prestige, good things, or a lump of coal during this Christmas season. We're gonna go Diego Pavia to start off with, and as much as I want to give him Cole the Awk, I think we got to give him a lump of coal, man. Um, I mean, it's largely because of the end of the year. Kind of his antics around the Heisman Trophy, kind of his antics around that were kind of a culmination of a lot of things. Again, I like Diego Pavia as a player. I think that in most cases, or maybe not most, many cases, that his personality is fun and good for college football. I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. But at the same time, you've got to show some level of maturity. At the same time, you've got to show that you care about something other than yourself. And I don't think Pavio's really done that in a great way. And I think that the reason I'm more inclined to give him a lump of coal than coal the Ock is ultimately it comes down to the idea that, Diego Pavia's future, this is his last year in college football, but like his future in the NFL is shaky at best. And when you're adding in some personality concerns, when you're adding in some character concerns, um, these are all factors that NFL teams are going to weigh when you're talking about a potential UDFA or seventh round pick or something like that, which is the space that Diego Pavia is currently occupying. And so when I look at all these things, like I just feel like he didn't do himself any favors. He didn't necessarily act right in the biggest moments, in the biggest stages where he could have. And that's gonna get you a lump of coal. Going back to the USC Trojans, though, I got Lincoln Riley here, and I'm giving him coal the Ock, man. I understand that Lincoln Riley is, I mean, he's probably not my favorite coach. He's not my favorite personality. It's not, it's not, a lot of it's not for me, quite frankly. But I do think he knows how to win. I think he knows how to coach football. There's a lot of evidence at Oklahoma. There's some evidence at USC of that. But I think that once I think he has matured in the ways of realizing that it can't be just him and then put the pieces around him kind of willy-nilly. D'Anton Lynn hire, firing Alex Grinch, like I think those are all meaningful things that have led to this point where Lincoln Riley is in a really good spot of building a new culture at USC, building a program at USC that can be sustainably good. And we haven't seen that from him in Los Angeles, but it seems like we're trending that direction, which I do think is a very, very big, very meaningful thing for Lincoln Riley. Last but not least, we got Carson Beck. I'm giving him Cole the Ock. Um, Early in the season, the Snapchat Chronicles, not exactly what we were looking for in terms of being a ending up on the nice list, let's say. But I will say that the way he's handled himself through the adversity of Miami, the way he's come in and kept Miami afloat, got Miami to the college football playoff. It's not been perfect. It's not been pretty, but he's definitely been a part of it. And even though there have been some moments like it was three or four interceptions, whatever. The interception filled game against Louisville, the loss that Miami took that made a lot of drama in the ACC in the college football playoff race. I do think that ultimately he's done enough good for this Miami program and for himself, quite frankly, that he does deserve Cole the Ock. Though I probably wouldn't push back or argue too much if you wanted to give him a lump of coal. But I'm gonna be festive in spirit and give him a positive prize here. Not positive on our next segment. We're going bah humbug, and that's our Scrooges of the college football season. Pete Bavacqua, the Notre Dame athletic director, brother, what are you doing? Like, I've been highly, highly critical of how Notre Dame handled its business in the wake of missing the college football playoff. Pissed me off, quite frankly. I I just don't think that they handled the situation well. I don't think that quote unquote leaking the pair or alleged promises made by the College Football Playoff Selection Committee about Notre Dame. I think that that's obviously something Notre Dame pushed for, and I think that's what's the word I'm looking for? Silly, honestly. It just feels like we're catering to someone who doesn't want to cater to anyone else, and more than that, like going after a partnership you have with the ACC outside of football, it's unseemly, it's unsightly, it is not the way that an athletic director of a program of this magnitude should be handling its business. But here we are, definite Scrooge Pete Bavacqua. Another one for us, and when I say for us, I mean for me. Bill Belichick, man. I I don't want to say I'm surprised because I said coming into this year, in the moment when Bill Belichick was hired, that there were two true outcomes for Bill Belichick in Chapel Hill. And one of those true outcomes was he's Bill Belichick and this works out. The other true outcome is this is an unmitigated disaster. And God, it's been an unmitigated disaster. They won more games than I thought they would, if I'm being completely honest, but now you've hired Bobby Petrino as your offensive coordinator to replace Freddie Kitchens. Now you made yourself a punching bag, a punch line in the sport of college football, whether that's because of Jordan Hudson, whether that's because of how hapless North Carolina has looked on the field. You just made this program a punchline. And again, I can still look and see the merits of the move from Bubba Cunningham and the North Carolina administration. Because what's the real ceiling of North Carolina football in this era? People will say it's higher than most, but like, when have we seen that? We haven't seen it in more than a decade, quite to be quite honest with you. Matt Brown probably had more opportunity, had more potential than what we're seeing now, obviously, but he never lived up to it. So what does that even matter? What the potential was if you didn't live up to it? It's not even potential at that point. It's unmet potential. And so bringing in someone to shake it up, I understand the thought process, but man, it could not have gone worse. And like personally, like I probably watched less North Carolina football this year than I have in a long time. Like it was on screens, but like I certainly wasn't invested or paying attention because, and that's, I mean, that's largely due to Bill Belichick. So not a huge fan of that. Definite Scrooge for me in my book this holiday season. I mean, everyone's Scrooge. Brian Kelly. I mean, when things are going well for Brian Kelly, whether that was at Notre Dame, whether that was any highs that he had at LSU, all of his, let's call them idiosyncrasies, to be kind. Uh, you can kind of brush them off a little bit. You can kind of write them off as not endearing's probably not the right word. I don't think anyone would ever describe Brian Kelly as endearing. That's probably a bit of a stretch. But I do think that it is it's easier to swallow those things, whether that's his strange quotes, his affectations with his speaking, yada yada yada. But when it's going bad, man, that stuff's hard to swallow. When it goes bad, that's a cultural thing. And like things went pretty bad this year at LSU. Like it just seemed like from week one on, or sorry, after week one, it was frustration after frustration after frustration with this LSU team. This is a team I thought was very talented, had a lot of high hopes for, and Brian Kelly didn't build a good roster. The offensive line, he didn't replenish it in any meaningful way that obviously hurt some components of this team. And ultimately, I just think that Brian Kelly ruined what could have been a fun season for LSU. And that's going to lead us to our next segment, which is the little lights aren't twinkling, Clark. And that's things that we thought were good, but aren't as good as they seem upon further inspection. And that's Garrett Nussmeier. Part of that is the Brian Kelly experiment and the Brian Kelly failures, I do believe. But another part of that is certainly that Garrett Nussmeier just might not be the prince that was promised, the guy that I thought he was personally. I was very bullish on Garrett Nussmeier as a pro prospect as a quarterback. I still think there is a path there, but we saw how he handled having a not ideal situation. We saw how he handled not having a top five pick at left tackle. We saw how he handled not having an offensive line that couldn't block for him. He's immobile. Um, he didn't make good decisions under pressure, and it bit him. And like I think that Garrett Nussmeier's stock hasn't been lower in probably 2 years. There's still talent there. There's a ton of talent. Obviously, has the NFL bloodlines in terms of the coaching pedigree of his dad, but man, it's hard to say. It's hard not to look at Garrett Nussmeier and feel and like when you compare it to how you would have looked at him going into this season or even at the end of last season, Stark contrast. Stark. And so I think Garrett Nussmeier definitely deserves to be on this list. Colin Klein, now going to be the head coach of Kansas State, was the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M. I think Colin Klein's fine. I don't think that Colin Klein is an active detriment. Whether and we don't know what he looks like as a head coach, but I'm talking as an offensive mind. I don't think he's an active detriment by any stretch of the imagination. But we saw what the Texas A&M offense looked like when it faced real competition at the end of the season. They ended the year with two losses, man. You lost to Texas in the regular season finale, you scored 17 points. You lost to Miami in the college football playoff, you scored 3 points. And make no mistake, up against very talented defenses, up against defenses that have stopped many other opponents. But having said that, we're also talking about a team that was loaded with talent, whether you're talking about Marcel Reed, whether you're talking about the host of backs in the backfield with Ruben Owens, EJ Smith, over and over again, talking about Craver or Concepcion on the outside at wide receiver. Feels like you probably should have done a little more with that. And I'm not saying Kansas State fans should be worried about what they're getting in Colin Klein. Obviously, someone who's very familiar with the program. But I am saying that maybe he's not an offensive guru by any stretch of the imagination. He might know it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like in Manhattan. I'll say that. And then last but not least, Mike Norvell, man. I still hold out hope, and that's probably the largely eternal optimist in me that Mike Norvell, I've seen him be a good coach. I've seen him take this team to the precipice of the college football playoff when it was a 14 college football playoff. And frankly, they probably should have been in the college football playoff that season, given what they did. And yes, you had the Jordan Travis injury, but based on the merits of your accomplishments, probably should have been in then. We've seen that from Mike Norvell, but what we've seen since has been awful. It's been truly terrible, and certainly not up to the standard of Florida State. And I'm honestly surprised to some degree that he's still the head coach in Tallahassee. Vote of confidence from the administration. But that vote of confidence, if you listen or you look and see what Florida State fans are saying, it just feels like they're fed up with the program because they don't want to seriously spend. Like Mike Norvell's buyout's large, sure. But Brian Kelly's buyout was large. Jimbo Fisher's buyout was large. And those two programs found the money, forked it over. And maybe Florida State can't find the same amount of money, but I have a hard time believing that given how well resourced that program is. And ultimately, when you come down to it, I just look at it as a situation where I don't know how this is going to get better based on what we've seen and based on what's happening with Florida State. Maybe it does, but right now it does seem like maybe Mike Norvell isn't the coach that we once thought he was. We're going to finish up the holiday season with some New Year's resolutions. So you say you want a New Year's resolution. Well, you know. Got three people heal, three people here, three head coaches, and we got some New Year's resolutions for them. So we're gonna start with James Franklin, and the New Year's resolution is 10-2 is a good thing again. Um, 10-2 kind of became a derogatory refrain when it came to James Franklin at Penn State. In Blacksburg right now, they'd be ecstatic with 10-2, and they should be. And I like yes, some of it is resetting expectations, but at the same time, some of it is also just James Franklin resetting himself to understand that this job is different than what you had at Penn State. The expectations right now, at least, are different. And maybe, down the road, 10-2 won't be good enough. But considering we're looking at a Virginia Tech team that's been struggling and fighting for bowl eligibility over the past few years, I think it does matter that Virginia Tech comes in and James Franklin come into this situation and think, if I can get to my steady 10-2 at Virginia Tech, not only is that, you know, ample progress for the Hokies, it is also maybe enough to win the ACC, quite frankly. I mean, hell, Duke just won the ACC at 7-5. Why can't 10-2 Virginia Tech win the ACC? So I think that's very important to consider. And James Franklin, the driver, So it's nicer to drive some places than other, and I think Blacksburg is a nicer place to drive than Happy Valley right now for the driver. Then we've got Dan Lanning, and this one, shout out to Bueller because he definitely inspired this one for me. Don't just say you're tough. That's my New Year's resolution. You got the rib tat, you got the Georgia ties, and you've got this personality that suggests toughness. You got this personality that portrays and projects a level of confidence and strength, quite frankly. Have we seen that on the field in the biggest moments? Iowa, against Iowa, sure. Against Indiana, not so much. Last year in the college football playoff, not so much. In Washington, the 3 years prior, or 2 years prior, excuse me, not so much. Dan Lanning needs to find a way to project his personality into the culture and not just project it, if that makes sense. Because Oregon does not play the way that Dan Lanning projects himself at all times, particularly in the on the big stages. So maybe work on that in the new year. If you do, Oregon is talented enough to do a hell of a lot of damage in the college football world, college football playoff. But as of right now, Bueller and I are always going to have a little bit of trepidation when it comes to the Ducks because that level of toughness, that level of Bueller likes to call them fake tough guys and like harsh, but not untrue. Harsh, but not untrue. And that leads us to the last one, which is Matt Rule at Nebraska. And for me, the New Year's resolution was talk less, win more. Matt Rule's and I don't even mean this as a derogatory as it might sound, but he's a D1 yapper, man. Dude goes out there and he knows how to talk. He knows how to put you in the spin zone. He knows how to say the right things. He's a good talker. How good's Nebraska actually been? I actually want to look this up real quick while I'm talking about it. I'm pretty sure that Matt Rule doesn't really have a quality Big Ten win to this point. Um, let's see, Nebraska schedule. Let's Google this real quick. Take a look at this. I mean, you just go through what they did this year in the Big Ten. You lost to Michigan. You beat Michigan State. You beat Maryland. You lost to Minnesota. You beat Northwestern. You lost to USC. You beat UCLA. You lost to Penn State. You lost to Iowa. Like you keep going through this, and it goes back to last year too, man. Like you go back to what they did in 2024 under Matt Rule in the Big Ten, and you're looking at things like you lost to Illinois. You beat Purdue. You beat Rutgers. You got your doors kicked in by Indiana. You lost to Ohio State. Gave them a game, but you lost. You lost to UCLA. You lost to USC. You beat Wisconsin, and then you lost to Iowa. Is their best win Northwestern in 2025? I think Matt Rule is a fine coach. I have no problems with Matt Rule. But at a certain point, we need to see the results. And he came into the Nebraska job with the reputation from Temple and Baylor that yeah, early on it's going to be some setting the building blocks, setting things into motion. But now we're at a point where those things should be in motion. And the fact that they really aren't based on the evidence that we're seeing from Nebraska football right now, troubling to say the least. But it's not troubling that this was episode 240, I think. Well, if not, you'll see it on the episode description of False Start. You can follow me, Cody Williams, at the Sizzle20 on the X. You can follow Bueller at Bueller118. You can follow the show at CFB False Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review, 5-star reviews on Apple, Spotify, anywhere podcasts are found. Please subscribe. Smash that subscribe button on YouTube. Happy holidays, y'all. Merry Christmas. We will be taking a slight break until the December 30th episode comes out, where we'll be going through pretty deep on the college football playoff quarterfinal games. Looking forward to that. We'll see you then on False Start.